Meeting for January 16, 2025 to order. Please stand if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, can we call the roll, please?
Dana Berthel.
Here.
Katherine Johnson.
Here.
Joseph Costick.
Here.
Richard Lassine.
Wait a minute. Say here. Say here. What's that?
Are you here?
Here.
Are you here?
Say here. I'm here.
All right, Rich is here.
Caitlin Olenek.
Here.
Deidre Stokes. Here. Aaron Janet.
Here. All right, we have no one signed up for public comment this evening, so we'll start off with the student council presidents. Anyone like to volunteer to go first? All right. Head up there and just hit the little button with the person there.
We good? Okay.
Yep, you're good.
Good evening, board members. I'm Jameson Stockram, the Lincoln Way Central Student Council President, and I'm ecstatic to once again provide an update on Lincoln Way Central. The Central community has worked hard to end last semester on a very high note and keep the momentum rolling to kick off second semester. This February, Student Council is hosting our winter dance themed Winter Wonderland. We are extremely excited to put on this event as we have planned a spirit week for students and arranged for food trucks to serve students at the dance. Looking back in December, Student Council and our PPS office contributed to an amazing finals week, giving students a great send-off before winter break. Throughout the week, our PPS office arranged for some de-stressing activities to put students at ease. For example, the service dogs available to all students during their advisories. Furthermore, Student Council executive members also handed out hot chocolate before students' first finals, spreading positivity and helping de-stress anybody worried about their exams. Winter sports kicked off at LWC in dominant fashion, as both levels of our boys bowling teams achieved SWSC conference championships for the first time since 2008. Speaking of championships, the district co-op girls wrestling team, which LWC is very proud to host, have gone undefeated this season and won the inaugural IWCOA Dual Team State Championship. Central has also hosted many successful athletic events, such as an entire weekend of cheer and dance involving over 175 performances in 120 different schools. Our very own Rhythm Knights took home a first place trophy at the event as well. Coming up, boys wrestling is hosting the best boys wrestling tournament in the state, the Illini Classic, this weekend. Finally, our Nightmare Spirit section continues innovating and garnering student attention for winter sports. Revived for the first time in years, every Friday home basketball game, Nightmare sponsors a student-led halftime show involving contestants from the audience. Students participate in a different competition each week and are eligible to receive a prize. Science Club just had the SWSC science competition earlier tonight, actually, at Sandburg, featuring titration stations, animal tracker stations, building catapult, and more. Robotics also has a competition this weekend as they have continued to improve the robot that they have been working on persistently all year long with complex programming and engineering skills. Theater is working hard at rehearsals for their upcoming play and are also planning the spring musical. Finally, the Senior Class Council founded the Nightly Relic Shop, where students can purchase old LWC merchandise on certain days with hot chocolate and festivities. So far, the operation has raised over $2,000 for the senior class gift and continues to be a huge success with the student body. I could not be prouder of the immense accomplishments we have made at Central so far this year. And I'm looking forward to all the great things we will accomplish throughout the rest of the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll just go in order here.
Good evening, everyone. Before winter break, Student Council hosted its annual Polar Express event, and it was our most successful turnout yet. Over 300 children's tickets were sold, along with 1 to 4 accompanying adults per child. This event brought local community members together to celebrate the holiday season. Additionally, our AF JROTC students gave back by participating in the meaningful Wreaths Across America event before the semester ended. To add to the holiday spirit, the Student Council organized a countdown to finals with 7 days of holiday festivities for students to enjoy. During this week, Bring Change to Mind provided comfort dogs to students to help reduce stress and lighten their moods ahead of exams. On the final day of countdown, Student Council members handed out free hot chocolate in the morning to reward students for their hard work. Beyond these activities, several other accomplishments stood out across our district. The Lincoln Way Marching Band performed brilliantly at the Rose Parade and related events in Pasadena, creating unforgettable memories. Students from all 3 Lincoln Way schools teamed up to perform Legally Blonde at this year's Theater Fest, where they also attended various workshops. At Lincoln Way West, senior Chloe Miller won first place in the annual bridge building competition, with her bridge holding nearly 50 pounds. Additionally, sophomore Eve English earned first place at the Joliet Junior College Area High School Art Exhibition, showcasing some of the best talent in the Southwest Chicagoland area. As we return from winter break, students are settling back into their routines while looking ahead to what's in store for our final semester. Counselors have been meeting with students to review their 4-year plans and conduct individual sessions to focus on future goals. In February, the Student Council will host the Winter Dance with a Winter Wonderland theme. The school will be transformed with decorations that capture the charm of the season. Events like these give our students the opportunity to come together as a community, celebrate their hard work, and create lasting memories. We are so excited for the incredible opportunities awaiting our students in 2025. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joke Minnie, and I will be presenting on behalf of Lincoln Way East as Student Council Vice President. After a very productive first semester and a relaxing winter break, East students are back at school and hard at work in the classroom. During the first couple weeks of school, underclassmen have been focused on choosing their schedules for next year. To help students decide, the PPS department is presenting class options for next year, and teachers are discussing course recommendations with their students. After our current students finish picking their schedules, it'll be time for the incoming freshmen to choose. In order to help them decide, we are hosting our Class of 2029 Open House Night in February. Incoming freshmen will have the chance to meet with teachers, coaches, and sponsors to see what East has to offer. We are very, very excited to see all of our incoming Griffins next year. Speaking of classes and career choices, Lincoln Way East recently held its inaugural STEM Career Exploration Dinner, an inspiring evening dedicated to connecting students with professionals in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields. Nearly 40 students participated in this event, which featured 11 volunteers from a variety of STEM careers. Hopefully, this will encourage more students to explore classes and career opportunities in a variety of STEM fields. Next month, Student Council will be putting on the Dancing in Disguise Winter Masquerade Ball on Saturday, February 15th. Last year, we hosted 1,300 students for a night of dancing, eating, and fun. This year, we hope to recapture the excitement with an amazing Spirit Week and dance. Additionally, our winter sports teams are currently rolling through their seasons. All teams are preparing for upcoming conference and sectional champion competitions. We look forward to seeing all the successes of our sports teams and hope for some state qualifying teams as well. Furthermore, our activities are in full swing. LW210 chess team will host sectionals at Lincoln Way East. Dance Marathon is planning a Miracle Makers event with Laurie Children's Hospital. Bus Buddies will be holding their Friendship Walk in the spring, and our Red Cross Club is fundraising this week to help California families going through the wildfire crisis. Creatively, our Griffins have been demonstrating their talents throughout the end of last semester with the Winter Concert Showcase and numerous madrigal performances. Also, the Lincoln Way East Marching Band represented our district at the 136th Annual Rose Parade in Pasadena and made us all proud with an amazing performance. Thank you to all the administrators and staff that traveled to California to support our schools. In addition, the cast and crew of Legally Blonde, the musical, performed at the University of Illinois last weekend at the Illinois High School Theater Festival. In just 14 rehearsals, mostly held over winter break, these dedicated students created an extraordinary show. Congratulations to everyone involved. All in all, we had a wonderful first semester, and we look forward to what second semester will bring. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you all to all of you. Before we move ahead, we need to appoint a secretary pro tem for the meeting tonight, as Joe Kostick is unable to join us in person. He's on the phone virtually, so we're going to go ahead and appoint Caitlin because she was the first board member to arrive. All right, moving ahead, we have the presentations, curriculum, instruction, and assessment update.
Good evening. I think I will be rather quick because the student council presidents took a lot of my thunder by talking about course selection. What I'm going to talk about tonight is to give you a quick recap of our strategic plan goals for curriculum and assessment. Our first goal was to increase focus on real-world skills, which I updated you on in our September meeting. Tonight, I'm going to focus on the second goal, which is to update our post-secondary planning process for students. Underneath our action plan, we have made great strides for our first one in integrating student creation and communication of personalized plans into course selection. And so that has been happening since we returned from our winter break. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the diploma and degree program and some community partnerships that they had talked about with the STEM dinner. Course selection and all of our college and career and post-secondary planning work is coordinated through the PPS department. They basically have 3 different areas that they focus on: the academics and learning, which includes their course selections and their plans for high school to get them to their post-secondary goals, but also the college and career exploration, as well as incorporating that into their academic goals. Our PPS curriculum, we've revised since School Links was adopted by the school district about 3.5 years ago. And we've revised this. You can see all the different activities the counselors do with our students. Most of this work is done on our half-day school improvement days when the students do not have their regular advisory. The counselors will go in. They also push into some of their classes or some of their advisories to get all of this work done. School Links is the platform that, as I mentioned, Dr. Fury had led the charge with in bringing a lot of this foundational work for college and career readiness for our students into the district. Students have been, as part of that curriculum, filling out some surveys that ask them about their interests, finding their path. Would they rather do this? Looking at particular clusters of careers. So they've already been getting a base in that. This year, we've really ramped that up in our programming and in checking that the students are actually completing it. This year, this is the big thing. At the top there, it does say that this is the 24-25 Lincoln Way Learning Plan. Each of our current freshman, sophomore, and junior students will be completing this. At the end of January, beginning of February, probably between right before our incoming freshmen who won't get this, we'll send an email home, and all parents will have access to the School Link system where they will be able to go in and approve their student's plan. As you can see on here, we are looking at each student setting every year a post-secondary goal, a career goal, identifying a career cluster of interest, a college goal, and a major or training goal. These goals the students set are not binding. It's simply where they are at right now. I was talking to Dr. Tingley, showing him his children's plans, and he definitely had some ideas about what colleges they might attend that might be different. But this is a wonderful opportunity for us to communicate with parents every year where students are at and what they are thinking about. Further down on this plan, parents will be able to see results of the career interest inventory, showing some of their personality traits, what careers they might connect to, their career interest inventory. There are also spots on there for them to see college and career readiness indicators, SAT scores. The big one this year is that they will be able to see the course planner. As you can see from this slide, it takes the entire 4 years. On the left-hand side here, you can see each line has our graduation requirements. And we see from freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, every year we're going to ask the students to plan out 4 years. The only thing it's going to lock them into is next year. That's where we're going to download all the courses for them into their course schedule for next year. Nothing is binding. It's giving the students an opportunity to plan and see what requirements they need to achieve whatever goals they are looking at. As the counselors have been presenting, they've been introducing students to this portion of the platform, some great handouts, a lot of features. I'm not going to take you through the entire process. Essentially, students log in. This is the first screen they see. And what we ask them to do is to select over here on the right-hand side at least one career area of interest under one of these pathways. This is actually, I whited out all the information from a current student who was filling this out. This student selected 2 different areas that she was interested in. They simply click continue. It takes them through every subject, leads them through the Accelerated Placement Act placements. Kids pick their courses in that. What I want to focus on tonight is to show you in those lines, when they get to some of these buttons, if they picked a particular career area, it will highlight for them our particular courses here at Lincoln Way that they can take to actually explore the career to see if they like it. Another interesting feature on here, there's lots of really interesting things I could show you, but I'm not going to talk all night. Students can click and check to see along here on the side, we've also aligned our diploma and degree program that a student can click on it and see, the classes that I've put in my 4-year plan, what areas am I missing if I was interested in pursuing that diploma and degree plan? We also have that for NCAA eligibility, a lot of fun other perks with this that we have found. But tonight, again, I wanted to stress how these were all connecting so perfectly to our strategic plan. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up we have the consent agenda. We have items E1 through E6. Would anyone like to have any of these pulled individually? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can you please open the vote?
Voting is open. This vote is unanimous. Motion passes.
Next up, we have the presentation of invoices from December 20th, 2024 through January 16th, 2025.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve invoices. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Motion to approve invoices from December 20th, 2024 through January 16th, 2025 in the amount of $3,087,928.70 as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions on the invoices? All right, hearing none, can you please open the vote?
Voting is open. This vote is unanimous. Motion passes.
All right, next up, we have the treasurer's report for December 2024.
In December, revenues totaled $3.7 million, expenditures totaled $9.1 million. The all funds cash balance as of December 31st was $68.8 million. Through the first half of the fiscal year, 47.2% of budgeted operating revenues have been received. 49.6% of budgeted spending has occurred. As you can see in my cover memo for the treasurer's report, we're within 0.2 of a percentage point from this point last
Can
year.
we-
So we're
Can we get
tracking right.
closer?
We're doing well. We're tracking well for both revenues and expenses. So I'll work to get that down to 0.1 in next month. Investment report through December, liquid rates fell to 4.4, 4.5. We had previously locked in several T-bills, 3 of which will mature in January. So at this time next month, we'll have received about $200,000 in revenue just from those, let alone the liquid and average return there of 4.7. Cash flow was negative again this month just from previous collections, and then mandated categoricals I'm expecting in January rather than them coming in December this time. Overall, as we closed 2024, tax collection rate was the highest it had been in 4 years, so that was good. Property tax revenue closed the calendar year strong. Looking ahead for next month, 25-26, we will likely bring first read of registration fees, meal prices in February. That's all I have.
All right, any questions for Dr. Dubeck? All right, hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the report?
So moved. Second.
We We have a motion and a second. Can you please open the vote?
Voting is open. This vote is unanimous. Motion passes.
All right, next up is the student activities report for December 2024.
Student activities for December 2024, the total student activity fund balance was $2,390,388 with revenues of $600,419 and expenditures of $656,006. There were no accounts in the negative at the close of the calendar year. Ask that you approve this report as presented.
Can I get a motion to approve the student activities report? We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Hearing none, can you please open the vote?
Voting is open. The vote is unanimous. Motion passes.
All right, next up is the report of the Lincoln Way Special Education District 843 Governing Board meeting held December 16th, 2024.
I believe we discussed it at our last meeting because their meeting was before our meeting. So our next meeting is next week.
Next meeting.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so nothing to add. FOIA requests,
Included in your backup materials for your review.
buildings and ground report,
The same. If there are any questions, we can do our best to answer them.
District 210 advisory.
We met on Tuesday, and we are in the second half of meeting, and so we're focusing on the handbook. And so some of the updates that we are exploring right now is how to possibly incorporate some language around AI and plagiarism.
Okay, thank you, thank you. We have a first reading for the elementary transportation intergovernmental agreement.
This would be for the intergovernmental agreement with Manhattan that would extend and match up with all, we have them all, I guess, tiered or laddered, for lack of a better term. Mike, how many years would this one be for?
This one would be 3. So right now, New Lenox expires June 30th, 27, Frankfurt and Union in 29. So we would do this one for 3 and put it in 28. And that kind of aligns with some of those other leases coming due as Andy and I look at purchasing and other ways to do transportation. So this keeps the staggering, and it is with their superintendent and board now for review. And so they would do the same thing like standard protocol, take it to a first read and then approve after that.
And we'll see that back in February then, March?
Yes, sir.
February.
Okay. All right, life safety updates.
Okay, and now the meeting comes to a screeching halt. So, I apologize, but I'm going to take a little time and go through a couple items. If you want to grab the folder in front, we went ahead and printed these out. I figured for 30 million, it's okay to have a couple pieces of paper. So the first sheet I would like to go over is the historical tax rate comparison of Will County High Schools. You've seen this before. So as we look at this, we've talked about our operating tax rate is very low in comparison to surrounding districts. We look at Joliet, Minooka, and Lockport. Our operating rate is low. It has been forever. And what that means, that's your money that comes in, you utilize it to provide the opportunities for your students, upkeep of your buildings, and then you turn around and do it again next year. So operating tax rate is once again low. That also then ties with your expenditure per pupil, which you've heard is low in comparison. The next category, our bond and interest rate, is high. It has been high. So high compared to what? Well, it's high compared to others, but more importantly, it's a little bit high when you compare it to our operating tax revenue. So, for example, as you can see, we're at 50 cents. That 50 cents, that rate will actually go down over the next 10 years. This board and previous boards put a lot of work into our long-term debt. As you recall, we went back, we were able to refinance $135 million at under 2%. We don't want to touch that. We don't want to add to that. Right now, we're at $27 million for the next 10 years. The next 9 levies will levy for that $27 million. And then at that point, that's gone. So we don't want to mess with that, but it's high. Right now, it's about 32% of our operating revenue. That's a high number, and that's important, and I'll talk a little bit when we come back to that. Our total tax rate is lower than some of our surrounding areas, and it's something to look at. So we have to live within our operating rate. Our bond and interest is locked for 10 years. I would not recommend touching that. We need to continue to pay on that. So if we go to the next sheet, area high school districts capital project spending. And Mike put this together for me. If we look at Lincoln Way, we look at 230, our neighbors to the north, and Lockport, you can see their 8-year total spend on capital projects and annual average. Ours is low in comparison. We're not able to do as much to our buildings, probably as we'd like to. You know, as an example, this last summer, we did our libraries. Well, we could only do half of Central's library and half of East Library. We're going to come back and get it here in the back half of this year because we just don't have a lot to operate on, but that's fine. We're doing okay, we're getting by, but we have to remember we have about 10 to 12 years to get Central and East right where we need them, because in about 12 to 15 years, we'll have to start to address West and North. But we're on pace, a little tight here and there, but we're on pace. The next packet. I'm not going to go through every project that's detailed, but the next two documents with the red top and the blue top, and these are all in your backup materials and the public can see them. These are the projects that were approved through the state of Illinois through our life safety. It's the description, it's the corrective recommendation and specs, and then the estimated cost is included. This total cost includes 10% contingency, 10% for your architects, your engineers, everything else. So this number is a pretty good number. We feel good about these numbers as we're going into these discussions. As I said, I'm not going to ask for any approvals tonight. I just want to kind of provide an overview and talk through this a little bit. So these are all HVAC or heating needs, boilers, air conditioning systems and the like. The oldest I could find on here was 1972. So 1972, I believe, at Lincoln Way East. So just about my age. So as we look through these are here. Now, the back page of this is DLA's recommendation. Just this week, Mike and Chuck and I were able to meet with our architects and engineers. They had originally put together specs to maybe do this over 3 years. They came back with different variations, and after meeting, they felt it would be best, in their recommendation, and we agreed, to do all of Lincoln Way East in Phase 1, the larger units and part of a roof at Lincoln Way Central, also in Phase 1, then come back in Phase 2 and do the remainder of Central. This proposal would be a Phase 1 in summer of 2026, so not this upcoming summer, the following, and then the Phase 2 would be in 27. Some of this work can be done once school begins. Some of the, help me out, Chuck, some of the controls can be done once school is in session. But any of the lifting, any of the crane work, any of that sort would have to be done over the summer, the demolition and such. So this would be kind of a prospectus. The next page is kind of folded over again. We went ahead and said, okay, we have to do this one way or another. And we've talked about, we have about $1 million a year in roofs, parking lots. We have about $3 million a year in HVAC. We could probably squeeze this all together and get this done each year over the course of the next 10 years. It would be very tight, and we would not be able to include any enhancements. What I mean by enhancements would be, a turf field or classroom upgrades or the like. We would just be doing nuts and bolts. If we did that, we used an assumption of a 5% increase year over year. Down on the left-hand side, we talked to different districts that are undergoing capital projects now and what are their assumed inflation from their architects or those districts. And you can see they range anywhere from 4.2 to 9%, so we went ahead and went with 5. So let's assume we did $3 million a year at a 5% increase. You can see that over those years, we're actually at 37.7. an additional 7.7. Our next step, if the board says, okay, yeah, we have to do it one way or another, let's look what it would look like if we wanted to go to bond. If we went to bond, what would that cost us? So, we're going to bring this back next month. Let's look at the memo first. This memo, and I'm not going to read through the entire law, but the link is in there if you want to read it. I skimmed it. I know Mike read it. But as we look at the recent legislation, this happened this past spring, and I've mentioned this in meetings. Tax cap school districts can now issue bonds for life safety. They must first be approved through the state of Illinois. We've already done that. So then we may issue bonds. It has to be approved by the board, and then we could go out and get that money. Why would they do this? Well, they did this because there are districts that don't have a DSEB. What a DSEB is, your debt extension limit. In 1994, whatever debt school districts held, so if we'd been sitting on $5 million payment that year, 1994, then our debt extension limit would have been $5 million a year for 20 years. And we could have gone out and borrowed. Ours was zero in 1994. Some districts had several million and are able to, they use this as part of their operating system. Ours was zero, that's fine, zero. This new law also allowed districts to go from 20 years to 30 with their debt. I would never recommend anything like that. In fact, we're going to talk about the policy here in a moment. But anyway, this is just kind of an overview, so it would allow us to go out and receive bonds to do all those improvements at one time. And one of the discussion points when we come back next month, there is an efficiency and economy of scale. Architects and engineers have told us, and Rich can probably speak to this, to do them all at once, one time, go to bid, do large systems, get them done. The other option would be to spread it out, and we can talk more about that. The last thing I'd like to mention this evening would be our draft policy. Now, this board and previous boards, a previous board had constructed a fund balance policy 420, which you're familiar with. The fund balance policy 420 was our target during our financial struggles to get our fund balance up to 33%. And that was our target every year as we budgeted. How close are we getting? How close are we getting? We finally got there. We have to stay there. But at the same time, we have a policy for incurring debt. Any debt has to be approved by the board. We included in this policy life safety, referendum bonds, other bonds, and then added the new Public Act 103-0591. Then Mike and I developed what we would recommend as a board philosophy regarding debt. The first paragraph, the school board has adopted a conservative approach to issuing bond debt, prioritizing fiscal responsibility and minimizing the burden on taxpayers. While bonds can be an important tool for financing essential school improvements, it is crucial the district maintains balance between meeting immediate needs and ensuring long-term financial sustainability. To this end, the board has implemented a strategy that caps the annual bond payment at a percentage of the district's property tax revenue. This limitation helps to prevent excessive debt accumulation and ensures that taxpayers are not unduly burdened by interest payments. For example, we're currently at 32% of that percentage of the district's property tax revenue. On year 10, we're going to be at 24%, because each year that's going to go down just a little bit, because that bond payment of $27 million, as new homes are built and new businesses come in, that amount to each individual taxpayer goes down just a little in the bond, not in the operating, in the bond segment alone. So, therefore, the district shall not issue bonds or other forms of indebtedness for which the total annual payments would exceed X% of the given year's operating tax revenues calculated by using the district's annual tax extension. Furthermore, these annual payments shall not extend more than X years into the future. What we're going to bring back is some scenarios from PMA and Bob Lewis at our next meeting. Bob will be here to answer any questions. Right now, I'm kind of at 15%. I've had time to look at these. We would go from 24% and drop down to 15 in year 11. We would then probably have to be at about 15% again in year 12. Best case scenario, we wouldn't have to go to a 13, 14, or 15, but there are people in this room that would want the flexibility to have that number at 15. You could put it at 15, then if anything catastrophic happened in the first year or two, you could go back to bonds. However, keep in mind that over the first 3 years, you don't have to go take another bite at this apple. You're automatically going from 12 to 9. That board then comes back and looks at this again and says, okay, now let's put that limit back to 12. You issue again, maybe you're able to go back to 11, and then 10, and then 9. At some point in 15 years, you're either going to have to continue to utilize this new law to maintain our buildings, or you're going to have to go to referendum. It's not realistic to think we can live on our operating rate alone for perpetuity. This allows us the flexibility to do all of these projects up front, gives us some breathing room to do some other projects and some other maintenance and upkeep of the buildings, and maybe some enhancements. And then I would propose, moving forward, every other year, life safety and these bonds are looked at by the administration and the board to say, okay, you bring in Bob Lewis at PMA again and say, what does it look like? Okay, we had 2 years go away. Now we have 7 more years at that 27 million. We've got a 15% and a 15%. So the bond rate and the bond amount will actually drop and then start to gradually go back up, and you've created a gap. And then, like I said, in the next 10 years, there'll have to be a strategy of what's next. I don't know what it looks like in 10 years, but I do know from our fiscally conservative approach over the last several years, the ability to restructure our bonds, the ability to rebuild our fund balances have put us in a position for us to at least bring this consideration to the board to talk about. It's our job, Mike and I and the administration, to bring options to the board, to ask questions and determine a course of action. This is an option. Next month, we'll bring actual numbers tied to this option so that you're able to see what it would look like at X percentage interest rate to add an extra year or to add 2 years. One of the options, and Aaron and I had talked about this earlier, maybe we leave it at 27 and we put all 27 in year 11. If you're in your own financial structure, you may do that. But at the same time, it would be nice to provide some tax relief to all of our taxpayers. As I said, we've got to do these one way or another. I think when we get our numbers back from PMA, you'll see that it's pretty apples to apples in terms of, do we borrow it and do large, or do we spread it out? I'll stop talking, and Mike and I will do our best to answer any questions that you might have at this point, and we'll provide more details in February. We would not ask for any approvals until March. I would provide those details to everyone here in the next 2.5 weeks, so that you have 2 weeks to review everything prior to the board meeting. Particularly with Bob Lewis being here, we can ask Bob any questions that you would have. And then we would come back in March and determine whether or not we would want to do this. We'd begin the process, if directed in February to move forward, begin the process. We would have to have a public hearing in March, get approved in March, sell those bonds in July. Am I right? July. And then that would put us in a position to go to bid for these projects in September for the September of 25 for the summer of 26. Questions?
Yeah, any questions from anybody? So if we were to do a one fell swoop approach, that would be one bid going out and we'd have one contractor that would handle the work?
So their thought, Aaron, because of the scope of the project, they would recommend we do a central, we do an east, and we do an alternate of both. Did I say that right, Chuck? Okay. And we would include the north roof is an area that's red on our map. We would include that as part of this package because that way they're doing the roof around their air conditioning work. That was their thought.
None of these are life-threatening situations for our students, though. I mean.
Correct.
Right.
But they fall under the guise of life safety in
safety.
the codes of the Illinois State Board of Ed. And that's the one interesting thing is you know, it's a tedious process to go through and fill these out, and then they go through all of them and approve or deny. But you are correct. In terms of, no, they're not. These are systems that do provide the heat and the air. Yep.
So in terms of a timeline, it's not essential that we do it right away, but we would save that $7 million over the long term.
Correct. There would also be interest. The thing to look at, and that's, the architects and engineers can speak more to this, is the way to design these systems. If we spread it out, they'll design it differently without central units, large units. They would spread them out like we currently have. And so they believe you could gain efficiencies with some of the larger units. Rich could maybe speak to that, but I know that it would, their design would go different depending upon which direction we chose.
If we did it year over year, we'd have to go to bid every year,
Correct.
right? We might not get bids one year, we may get really high bids another year. I mean, so that 3 million could be 4 million.
So,
Joe didn't like this conversation, he left.
Joe's got a call. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say doing East Central, combine both, we'd probably have to talk about a qualifying contractor to do both, because that would be a really big number. But if you could take this to bid in September of this year and make it
2 years.
a 26, 27 project.
Yeah, that's what we would do, correct? They would put both of them.
Right.
Everything.
Right, so, yeah, so.
So I
we-
misspoke on that. It
yeah.
would put everything, yes,
Right, it
26
would
and
be-
27.
25 bid, investigation, all of that stuff over the spring of '26. Short-term items we install in summer of '26. Long lead items are '27. I find that to be the absolute cheapest. You get out to 3 years, people start adding for escalation. You get 1 year, they pile on for premium and overtime. The 2-year projects seem to just go, everybody wants them. That they would be really inexpensive.
So, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of information in here. I'm sure the public will want to maybe comment on this as well. I mean, I'm going to be reaching out to some people I know that would have an interest in this, maybe former board members that we find this of interest. So, you know, I'll come back obviously next month probably with some more questions, or over the next few weeks have some and reach out to Dr. Tingley, Dr. Dubeck.
Yeah, and that's why we wanted just to present kind of an overview this evening, and then come back with more of the nuts and bolts in February, and not ask for any approval until March. Now that we have kind of the scenario of where the bonds will fall, when we were looking at them 3 ways, Mike and I were determining whether we went to bond 3 different times. But now it would make the most sense, you know, take it all in July. We would gain interest on the amounts that we're not expending out over time, which would also offset some of the cost of the interest.
Are we aware of any other districts, not in this area, but just in the state that are using this approach?
Several. So every day I get an update on articles throughout the state of Illinois. I sent Mike one yesterday. I got another one today. So I'm aware of 2 large districts just in the past 2 days who have had this very discussion with their board. What it's going to come down to, and Rich's point to the bidding, is who has already done the legwork of having the approvals. These other districts have not yet gone to the state for approval. So that's going to take 4 to 6 to 8 weeks once they start stacking up down there. So the fact that we already have the paperwork in order, we would just have to go through the bonding process now, which everyone else would have to do if approved. But they're waiting for approval of their life safety surveys. We have that completed. But to answer your question, Aaron, yes, this is going to become commonplace. The other part of the law that I did not bring up, it also helps with those districts that are mandated to add kindergarten. So there are also some exceptions to those school districts throughout that, for that particular bill. Doesn't apply to us, but the life safety certainly does.
I mean, just to note, a lot of the comments in here is that, these machines, I mean, they're costly to maintain. I mean, by fixing them, hopefully that will gain.
The boilers are an absolute nightmare. $250,000 here and there, Chuck, over time. Yeah, don't even get him started. So, yeah, it is. We've maintained, we've done an excellent job of maintaining. In fact, that's one thing that the engineer said, he goes, he's been working with the district for several years. He said, after this iteration, finally, the systems will all be mine. He couldn't believe, as long as he's been working, that he was able to find systems that he did not install at Lincoln Way, with Berg Engineering.
Well, 1952, I had a problem with my furnace. It's only 20 years old, so can only imagine problems with a 52-year-old furnace.
We've done a good job maintaining, but as I said, the timing of our master schedule and our master plan, and was also in our strategic plan, is that we're able to, in the next 10 to 12 years, get everything where it needs to be, and then we would focus our attention to West and the North Building, and go from there.
Scott, real quick, so when you do the further spreadsheet, we are going to extrapolate out all the cost of, just on the design side, over not doing it over 10 years, that will be huge savings on that side alone. So they're gonna compound out the small projects and escalation over.
In the design itself,
Well,
Yeah.
not only the construction side,
Yeah.
just the administrative cost of a 10-year spread on construction.
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Dana, question?
Is there any in-between option? I mean, I know we're talking like a very short period of time and a very long period of time. Is that just due to the fact that the way that this is written, that it's a 10-year or a 20-year,
the
not
way-
a shorter?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the way we could do, if we wanted to shorten it up, we could do two things. We could wait some years until we start, or we begin to layer costs on top of our other bonds. Mike and I have seen other districts' presentations where their thought is to begin to layer their new bond payment on top of the existing bond payment. I wouldn't want to do that because our prior board set that number at 27 to be the absolute cap and then let it start stair-stepping down. But that's a good question. So our options would be, we could wait several years until we start, or we could do some now, wait 3 years, do some later. I think what we'll see, even when we incorporate the interest cost, the offset of the increase in cost over time is going to be about equal. The scenarios we're going to put together, we will utilize some of our annual operating to pay off some of the interest or principal on these bonds. That'll be included in the whole cost structure. But that's a good question. It does seem like it's all or nothing. Either we spread it out 10 or we do, we could do different scenarios where we could do, 10 and take a couple years off and do another 10 and take a couple of years off. But this is just kind of an analysis.
Yeah, and I know that there's value in doing, to everybody's points,
Correct.
like to doing the projects at once and having the work being done by the same group in the same time with the same resources and all the same things. Like, I get that. I just was curious if it was, like, it had to be that, or if there was a reason.
No,
why we were-
there are several.
I know there's probably 100
As I come in
iterations that
every-
I don't
as I
even need to
come in
know.
every
I'm
morning,
good. Like, I mean, all of
Mike
them.
dreads to see me as I've dreamed up another one.
I won't ask you for another one. I was just curious, but thank you.
And this should not have any negative impact on our rating, like our overall financial rating that we have.
No, it won't. In fact, as part of this, we would go back to Standard & Poor's or Moody and ask them if they would go back and do another rating, as we would be going back to the market. And so I don't know if they'll do that or not. Was it last spring last spring we just received another upgrade. So we're actually higher than the last time we went to refinance the bonds previously. But yes, it would not impact. That gets back to that number of how far out you go and what that overall number is. I think as long as they see that we are putting parameters on that and not abusing it, like I couldn't imagine going 30 years, but I'm sure there will be districts that do some different things. But I would, we'll want to stay conservative in our approach.
Is there any penalty for not spending the total amount? Like, what
That's an
happens? to that?
excellent question. So what happens is we actually have to go get the bonds and we would go get them in July prior to going to bid. So we feel confident that our number is going to be within that number. Once we pay everything out, whatever's left, there'll be options. Board members, that last time we went and we abated the bonds. So when we refinanced last time, I think it was 3.5 million, wasn't it, Mike? 3.5 million, we just went ahead and pushed back to the taxpayers. So at the time we pay everything out, we'll see where we're at on our projects. If we're good on life safety, if the board so chose, you could push that right back into the tax bucket. You could abate the debt. And if you don't do that, it must be utilized, it must be put in placed in Fund 60 and used for capital projects. You know, it would never go to salaries, would never go to benefits. It would have to be earmarked specifically for capital projects. But that would be something when we get to the end, would bring back to the board and say, okay, here's what's left. Here are the projects on the horizon. However, our 5 cash shows we have money for that. If you say, well, let's knock 2.5 million off of year 12, you know, we would do that. So there would be options, and it's our hope that there'll be some left at the end that the board can make a decision on.
This may be.
Did I answer that right, Mike? Okay, good.
This may be premature, but interest rates are right around 5 at this point, so probably not under 2 again? No? Okay.
No, they've come down some. I've seen some presentations recently that were floating low 4s, but you get different advisors that would ask for different sort of cushions in that, right? So they've got 50 basis points, 75 basis points as a cushion. So that would be on what I would hope would be the high end of where we'd get in terms of a sale and close, but that's the ballpark. So that would be factored in the interest, and then to Dr. Tinley's point, though, offset to a degree by investments and higher interest rates on that side, offsetting while we hold the money until it's spent. So.
Anything else? Well,
Okay, in the next couple of weeks then, you'll be receiving more information, and we'll be ready to discuss some scenarios in February.
All right, next up, we have the first reading for policies.
Including your backup materials, be happy to answer any questions between now and the next meeting. Primarily, just updates, no real changes or policy changes of consequence, but they're in there for your viewing.
And then we have, oops, I jumped ahead a little.
Legislative
report.
Yeah, we made it through the lame duck session without any damage, fortunately. Only one bill passed that would impact education at all, and that was vetoed by the governor because there was not a line item to pay for it. So no impact. That's always good news.
All right, anything from the superintendent?
Nothing additional.
Other district business?
None this evening, and no correspondence.
One thing to add, last month I congratulated the Mokina 7th grade girls basketball team for 4th place. I failed to mention Summit Hill was also downstate in Elite 8. And that same night we had our board meeting, Liberty's 8th grade girls basketball team won state. So I said Lincoln Way girls basketball's in good hands coming up. It's in really good hands if you look at all those teams. So congrats to all those young ladies. And with that, I would entertain a motion to enter into closed session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of employees and/or collective negotiation discussions.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we open a vote, or is that an all in favor?
You can do it all in favor.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, we are in closed session. No action after?
No action.
No action after, so enjoy the evening, everyone.